Hey guys, it's Cameron the Murray for you guys. I'm reviewing this movie that I was absolutely hyped for. I've been wanting to see it for a very long time now, and now it has finally come out. And that, of course, is Wes Anderson's highly anticipated film, Isle of Dogs. And what Isle of Dogs is essentially about is we basically center on this futuristic world, and basically in this futuristic world we see the mayor Kobayashi. He basically, there's this like dog flu going around where all these dogs are infected, and basically as a way to rid the world of this, he decides to just outlaw all dogs completely, sends them to this trash island, and we cut to 6 years later where basically these dogs are now living all on their own. They basically are forced to scavenge and hunt for themselves pretty much, and they eventually come across this young Japanese boy named Atari Kobayashi, who is actually the mayor's nephew, and basically he is there to track down his lost dog Spots, and the dogs decide to assist him, hopefully finding Spots, but also maybe finding a way to end all of this, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Isle of Dogs in general, I was absolutely hyped for this movie. I mean, there really is no getting around it. Wes Anderson is easily one of the best directors working today. I think he rarely puts out something that is disappointing. In fact, I don't think I've seen a Wes Anderson film that I don't absolutely loved. And Isle of Dogs is like another film to add to that never-ending catalog of just very amazing talent. That's exactly what it is. Isle of Dogs definitely did not disappoint at all. It is a very different film from Wes Anderson. It is both his most political, but I think also one of his most poignant to date, and we're getting into right now, starting off with the cast. Now, I am well aware that, with this film, there are about a half a dozen actors in there, so it is hard to just focus on one of them, but I do want to talk about our main character, because I do think there is a standout, and that would be Bryan Cranston as the main character here, Chief, who really goes through a very interesting arc in this movie. I mean, Cranston already is known for his very monotone and just very menacing presence, someone that you definitely don't want to mess with for sure, and he definitely does do that very well, but you can also see that there definitely is a lot of, nuances in Chief. He is someone who, he is a stray dog, and he doesn't really have that family or that memory that some of the other dogs fondly do, and I think Cranston did a really good job portraying that. You really do get latched into his character very easily. There's a lot of emotional moments throughout the film, and he really did do a great job here. I think, honestly, everyone was really great, but he, for me, was easily the standout. I really love what he did here. However, all the other 5 dogs are all equally just as entertaining. Edward Norton, I thought, was hilarious here as this dog that constantly thinks he's like the leader of the pack, even though he's not, and nobody else really enjoys the fact that he is always the one in control. Jeff Goldblum is great here. He basically plays Jeff Goldblum. Bill Murray basically plays Bill Murray, but honestly, I wouldn't ask for anything more. I wouldn't want Jeff Goldblum to not play Jeff Goldblum. Like, that's just who he is. You want him to do, the uhs and the yes and the uhs and a lot of stuff like that. Like, he definitely does have the Jeff Goldblum-isms down. Bill Murray, like I said, he does his thing. As, Bob Balaban, I just thought all 5 of these dogs just worked very well together. They're very fun to watch throughout the film, and I thought they had really great chemistry, honestly, and that's definitely one of the best parts of the film for sure. But someone else I do want to zero in on is Greta Gerwig as Tracy Walker, and she really stands out from a lot of the characters here because almost all of the humans speak in Japanese except for Gerwig's character, and she really does a great job. She is this dog activist, basically, that is really enraged at the injustice that is going on with them, and I thought that she had a really good arc throughout the film. She's not in the movie as much as I thought she was going to be, but what she has here, she definitely is really damn good, and she continues to show why I think she's one of the most understated actresses working today. I don't know if she's one of the best, but everything I've seen her in, I've absolutely loved, and this just added to the list. She really was great here. And then everyone else here really does do a great job. Koyu Rankin as Atari Kobayashi, you know, he does what he needs to do. He's really great. Scarlett Johansson, Tilda Swinton. This is Frances McDormand. This is probably one of Frances McDormand's most odd and funniest roles in a very long time. And that's all I'm really going to say. She's like this like translator in the film. It's honestly hilarious what they did with her. I thought she was great. There's just a lot of characters here. There's a lot of great actors, but everyone really gave it their all. There's not a single actor here that I don't think was at the top of their game, and that's something I will definitely give this film for sure. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because of course that is what you want me to talk about. I'll say this right off the bat, if you are not a fan of Wes Anderson's previous work, this is not going to convert you. There really is not much different when it comes to the directing. It is different film for him, but the awkward humor and the heartwarming moments, that's all still here, and it's very well done. I was laughing quite a lot throughout this movie. There's a lot of great humor in here, and very similar to most of Wes Anderson's films, it's not very in your face. It's very subtle, and I think he does a really great job of it. He's just a very subtle, weird director, and I think that's something that's so great about his humor. You don't really see it in other films. Other films, sure, there's really great humor, but I don't think it's as subtle and as, you know, sort of, smart as this humor really is. This really humor where you got to think about it for a second and really find the funny in it that way. And it was so subtle to the point where I was surprised my audience really did laugh, but really everyone was cracking up, and I really did love the humor here. As usual, I love the humor, but the heartwarming moments also are really great. I mean, this is not something that's surprising. I mean, saying Wes Anderson is a great director is like saying the sky is blue. He is one of the best directors working today, and this just demonstrates how great of a director he really is. But let's get into the writing, because from a writing perspective, while this does have a fairly simple story, this is a very different film from Anderson. He's always been one of those directors that tries to reinvent himself every film, and he definitely does do that here, because sure, the main story here, it is pretty simple. You know, this is predominantly a story about a boy and his dog, but there definitely is a lot more to it than just that. And especially when it comes to the whole aspect of Japan, there is a large onslaught of, you know, Japanese culture in here. I mean, sure, there is the humor and the heartwarming moments. Those are implemented, and when they're here, they are obviously done really, really well. That's something that he's always been known for. You know, is really quirky and out there humor, and his really touching, you know, heartrending moments. That's all in this film for sure. But you know, the big thing about this movie is that, you know, it is much more, I think, foreign than his other films have been. And to me, it really did seem like Anderson was very much inspired by Akira Kurosawa. There is a lot of familiar sort of techniques and very similar type of things that he does in this film that very much felt like a Kurosawa film. And I thought that was honestly a really cool choice. The way that was implemented, I think it was right move for this movie, and I was definitely very impressed with that. What I also really love about this movie are the characters. I think all the characters are really interesting. There's not really a character here that I didn't connect with, but I especially really love the group of dogs because they really all come from different walks of life. Some of them are like really famous celebrities, and some of them are simply just house pets, and you can already see the divide there. And I thought they all were really compelling, honestly. They all really do go through very interesting stuff. Jeff Goldblum, you know, he's got this great thing where he is constantly telling all these, like, rumors, and it's just really funny stuff. Or Edward Norton, who, like I said, is, like, the leader of the pack, and everyone, you know, he seems to think that he's the leader, and he, you know, is very bossy, and no one else seems to really enjoy that. And, you know, he's constantly, you know, being, like, the voice of reason for everything. But then, of course, you have Chief. And Chief, for me, was probably the character that had the biggest arc out of everyone because he starts off the movie and he's about as aggressive and I think just, you know, very distant as you could possibly get. He is completely against any sort of authoritarian, you know, any sort of authoritative figure. He does not want to listen to anything, and he just does not really enjoy enjoy humans that much. He doesn't really see the point to them, and I did find his character to go through a really interesting arc, especially once we get Atari in there. There's definitely some really great stuff that he goes through, and it honestly is really heartwarming. He goes through this really interesting journey, and I think Cranston, like I said, who already has such great conviction, I think the character in general was just so well realized, and I was definitely very impressed with how well that character was handled. All the other characters are really great in their own regard. I think all of the other characters we come across here are really great. Of course, I do want to bring up the big thing in this movie. A lot of people, I think, have misdirected this film because this film is very bilingual in the sense where, sure, there is English stuff in there, but almost every character who is human in this movie, despite, like I said, Gerwig and Frances McDormand and a couple others, they almost all speak the native language. And a lot of people have seen this as, oh, Anderson thinks that the Japanese language is funny, and I don't think that's what he was doing at all. I think it's one of two things. One, sure, it is played for laughs, but that's more because the fact that the dogs are so used to talking in English that they don't know what Atari is saying. So you find the funny in that way because they can't really communicate with him in the way they would with each other. And this was actually a really cool idea, the way they went about it, because they could just do the thing where the humans hear them just speaking, in dog pretty much, because that's what they do in a lot of these movies. But the difference here is that, sure, they can talk to him, they can speak very perfect English. It's just the humans are Japanese, and I thought that was honestly a really cool idea. And a lot of this movie is showing the culture clash between those two, and it honestly is very well handled. And there is a lot of social commentary this film does have, and I think there's primarily two things. I think the other thing Anderson was trying to get at with this film is kind of a social commentary on illegal immigrants. I mean, think about it. The dogs in this movie, they're seen as like the worst thing ever. Any sort of problem that happens, oh, it's the dog's fault. We gotta like eradicate all the dogs. And what does this sound like to you? Well, this sounds very similar to the current problem we have with illegal immigrants. And I don't think that this was something that Anderson was trying to like shove in everyone's faces. He's a very subtle director in that way, but to me, I think that is one of the things he was trying to get at in this film, and I think that was definitely very well realized. But it's also very shockingly relevant in terms of its other element, which, the whole uprising that takes place in this movie led by Gerwig's character, it is largely all kids, and it's kids, who really want something done and are tired of, the government controlling everything and them going at this in a very sort of materialistic approach, and they really want something done as soon as possible. They have a lot of urgency there, and again, this is very similar to recent events. Now, again, there was no way that Anderson could have foretold these events because he made this movie far back, before any of this happened. He made this movie in secret, like no one even knew this was really coming out, but of course, because of the nature of the, the news and all that stuff that's going on, it was very interesting to see that stuff in this movie. It is actually fairly prevalent, and it is very inspiring in that way. I do think it's a movie that shows that, rebelling does do something, and, eventually you will prevail, and I do think that is definitely a very good message in here that I really did enjoy overall. I think that's definitely one of the best things about this movie. The writing, like I said, it's really well done. It gets into some really dark stuff as well, and I think it was very brilliantly well realized there. I was definitely very impressed by it. However, it's not a perfect movie. I do not think this is a masterpiece, mainly because of two things. One, Greta Gerwig's character, as much as I did enjoy her, I did think she was a bit underused in this movie. I think that her character, she does go through an interesting arc, but I just felt there wasn't as much given to her as there was with the other characters. And again, in a film that has almost like 40 characters, just the fact that there's only one that's underused, I think is, alone is praiseworthy. That most directors couldn't even try to get that to accomplish accomplish that. It's very hard to do that, but the fact that Anderson pulled it off, I definitely hats off to him, because it's not an easy feat in any way, shape, or form. But also, the ending of this movie, there is one shift with a character, and it just felt very convenient, and honestly, it did come across as a little corny. I just didn't really believe that after everything we get with this character, that they would suddenly go in this direction, and obviously it needed to happen, but I just don't think that it should have gone exactly the way it did. It just didn't feel very believable, and considering how realistic this movie does feel at points, this just felt a little too cheesy. It just did not go with the rest of the tone of the film. The animation here, though, is brilliant. I love the animation to this movie. It is so well realized. Everything just feels so real. Trash Island feels like the worst place ever. It should. It feels like this place that is so infested and rancid, just like the worst place you could ever go. And then when you contrast that with the city of Nagasaki, you know, it's very beautiful and it's very colorful, and again, very similar to his other films, they almost feel like models. They really do. They don't feel like you know, just animation. It feels like simply just like models that you could walk in like a museum and watch, and just the attention to detail is just so great, and that's something I've always loved about Anderson. He puts so much detail into this world, more than I can honestly say in this review. You guys just have to see the film for yourself, because it's gorgeous to look at, and while the animation is it is intentionally unappealing at points, the stuff that is great, it looks fucking great, and I think he did a great job with the animation. The score, this is easily one of my favorite scores of the year, maybe my favorite of the year, honestly, because the whole score is pretty much just drums, just like Japanese drums, and I thought that was honestly a really cool choice. Again, it gave this film this different feel than his other movies do, and I really think it helped it stood out more. Like, it's one of those scores where I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to know right away that this is Isle of Dogs. It's very similar to Thoroughbreds, where it's all like percussion instruments, and I really did enjoy that overall. And then the editing, I really never felt the length, to be honest with you. I was into this movie pretty much the entire time, and I think it was definitely very well utilized. Overall, guys, Isle of Dogs is a fantastic movie. I think this is definitely another really great film from Wes Anderson. It has the great humor in there. It has the heartwarming moments, but also, like I said, it has some really great social commentary, as well as some really stunning animation. It most likely is going to win Best Animated Feature next year at the Oscars. I'll be very surprised if it doesn't, and it will for sure be in my best list of this year. This is definitely one of my favorite movies I've seen so far this year. I definitely really love pretty much everything about this movie, other than those few small complaints that I did have, and I am going to give Isle of Dogs overall an A. So overall, guys, in my review of Isle of Dogs, what you guys thought of this movie overall, leave your thoughts in it. Definitely check this one out for sure, guys, but that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoy. I'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.